Greetings, greetings, greetings. Hopefully that you're having a great African American last Sunday History Month celebration. Y'all done gone to Sunday school, gone to church, went to eat, and you all ready for the life celebration by Franklin Greece Symposium. We're making history. This is our first broadcast that we're doing over streaming without being in person there. You'll find the calendar later on. We're only going to do in person 4 times. The next time will be in May, September, and then November. The rest will be like this. So, got to come up with the technology and get ready for it. And so, it's getting greater. It's getting greater. One of the things we're getting big time, we have a producer. Mr. Cedric Lewis, my relative. You can get some good work free out of your relatives. Yay! Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. I'm going to surprise him. I'm going to actually give him a check on his aunt's checkbook, Marie Franklin. She got more money than I have. She got more money than I have. But if you signed in and said send, share, let everyone get on here. This is going to be a good one today. Our facilitator, my sister, we've been doing this for quite a while, years, and people have been blessed. And when we was meeting in person, it would be anywhere from about 20 to 40 to 50 people. But the live streaming is where more people were blessed, and you can always go back and view. So we're going to now, what they say, without further ado, as we're making Black History Month history on this last Sunday, February 2025. Dr. Tonya Cunningham coming in her own way. Have your way. Have your way. Teach, preach, whatever you want to do. It's your thing. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. Can't tell you who to sock you to. All right. Take it away.
Oh, hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? Mr. Barry Franklin, my brother, listen, you never know what he's going to say. Happy Sunday, everybody. And can y'all believe that we are at the end of another month? And just like he said, it is Black History Month. So we are so excited to see you guys. And just like he mentioned already, we are doing some new things. We have a producer now who is helping us to go live on different platforms. The last time we did this, it was during the pandemic because the world was forced to use digital platforms during that time, but we were only on Facebook back then. But now we're live on YouTube as well as Facebook. So we want you to mark your calendars. The calendar has been listed, and Barry mentioned the information just a moment ago as well, when we will be virtual. We will be live only 4 times this year. And listen, he and I were chatting backstage, and I said, this worked out pretty well for me because I really don't want to be in a plane right now. So I am enjoying this virtual space. So welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time being with us for our Grief Symposium, we have been doing this for about 12 to 13 years. So if this is your first time with us in this space, especially in this virtual space, would you just put a 1 in the comment section? And our digital team will certainly let us know this is your first time. Why do we acknowledge that? It's because we want to appreciate you, first of all, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on here. And then, secondly, to commend you because it takes great courage to log on to a setting like this. And we're talking about a subject that many people don't like to talk about. It's about grief. So that speaks highly of you for doing that. We just want to take that time to acknowledge you. And while we're doing that, we also want to appreciate Barry and Marie Franklin for providing this service, not just to their families, but to anyone, especially when we're in person. They don't close it off to the families that they serve. They invite anybody in the Austin surrounding areas. If you've experienced a loss, you are welcome to come. So we appreciate them for providing this service to all of us because it is something that we all need. Now, I put it in the chat on Facebook, but we want you to know that there are handouts available for today. And if you haven't done so, you have the opportunity to go ahead and click on the link in the description section, okay, on YouTube and on Facebook. Click on the links there. It's two links. One will be the handout, and the second will be the grief activity handout. Okay. So you can go ahead and do that, and you can follow along with me as we go through the information today. But if you're not able to do it right now, that's okay. You can go ahead and just make a personal note, but you definitely want to go back and get those handouts. Why? Because you want to go back and be able to review them from time to time, because grief comes like waves in the ocean. So you may be doing okay today, but tomorrow you may not be doing okay. So you'll need to pull out the handout. So we always encourage our attendees to get you a folder, and you're just going to put all of your handouts in there that we give you each month. Again, it'll be a good resource for you, a little personal library. Once we finish at the end of the year, you'll have some great foundational tools to help you continue on your grief journey. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our topic today. Today, we're talking about when grief feels overwhelming. Can anybody relate to that? If you can, if you have been in the grief space and you say or feel like this is overwhelming, put me in the chat. Me. Listen, I want to put a me in the chat, but since I'm teaching you, that was me just about a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, grief is overwhelming. One of the things that we normally would do to start our sessions is to ask you, what have you done to take care of yourself? What have you done to take care of yourself? Why do we ask that question? It is because if you don't take care of you, who will? If you don't take care of you, who will? All of us must be diligent and doing the things to take care of ourselves during our grief journey. So as you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and put those things in the chat. I see you, Tassie. Tassie said me. Sophia said me on Facebook. Absolutely. You guys are not alone. Me too. Okay. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. So I want to make sure you do things to take care of yourselves. If you've done something since I saw you last month, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. Let us know what you have done to take care of you. What have I done for myself? Lavera says me. Absolutely. I had my own personal therapy session. I am set up for once a month to see my therapist when things are going well and when things are not going well. I have him on rotation. Why? Because I need to check in to make sure that my mental health is okay. So that's one of the things that I've done to take care of myself since I saw you all. So again, let's go right into our topic, talking about when grief feels overwhelming, seeking professional help. Now, this is going to be a big one for a lot of people because some of us think we don't need professional help, and we do, especially when it comes to grief. Seeking professional help, and we're going to talk about how important it is for us to do that from time to time. So, what is grief? The pandemic, many of you have heard me say, those of you who have been following us, you've heard me talk about the pandemic and how it came and changed our world, didn't it? Absolutely, it did. Here we are 4 to 5 years later, and it looks like our world is changing again. It's changing again, and we're having to make some adjustments. So, believe it or not, people are experiencing grief, and it's not related to the death of someone. Many people are overwhelmed and experiencing grief because of the recent changes that have taken place with our new administration. Okay. Some people are feeling sad. Some people are feeling overwhelmed. Some people are being afraid. And I personally have several clients who have been impacted on their jobs. One person was already released from their job, Black female. Another Black female works for the government, and 3 days after the inauguration, she and all of her employees, her colleagues, they received emails telling them You guys got to come back in the office to work. She's been working remotely for 17 years before even working remote was a thing. That's a big thing to me, but some people were doing that way before the pandemic. But can you imagine after 17 years, you get an email, you got to come back to the office, and she's just ready to retire. So it's her. And then I got another client who works on the opposite end with the clients who receive funding from the government. And we were having a session with that particular Black female, and her heart goes out to them. She's kind of like a social worker. And man, she was talking about how her clients were calling, and they were scared, and they were crying, and they were in grief because they were losing their support, their financial support. So a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed right now when it comes to grief. So we want to encourage all of you to definitely seek professional help as you need it. So what is grief? It is a very unique thing that we experience. It is as unique as the love that preceded it. Okay? It is not about what we call, quote unquote, moving on, but it's about learning how to carry love and loss together. Can you put that in the chat? Carry love and loss together. That's what grief is. You got to be able to learn how to balance both of them. Many people in grief, they stay in this place of being overwhelmed because they feel sad quite a bit. And for those of you who have been here before, you remember me teaching you about grief is something that happens on the inside of us and it never leaves, meaning grief never ends. But the pain of grief does end. You should not be feeling the same way you did when the person died. If it's a death loss, you feeling the same way 5 years later. No, that's not how grief works. If you feel the same way you did on the day that it happened, that means you're not doing your grief work. Okay. And so many people get stuck in their grief work is because they feel guilty for quote unquote moving on. I have many people say, well, my family and my friends, they want me to just move on and forget my loved one, just move on and pretend that the divorce didn't happen. So moving on, again, is not about leaving your loved one. It's not about dishonoring your loved one, okay? You're going to be learning how to move on and carry love and loss together. So we all know that grief is a natural and complex for some. It's a natural experience, but it can also be complex depending upon what's happening around your loss, okay? It is expected, but it becomes paralyzing sometimes when people don't seek professional help. So when you do seek professional help, it is a sign of strength, not weakness. Some people think the fact that they need to call a counselor, a grief counselor, it's like, oh man, I'm weak. Oh, I thought I was stronger than this. No. Seeking professional help is a sign of strength and not weakness. So here are some quotes that some other people said as it relates to what grief is. Jamie Anderson says, grief is love with nowhere to go. Some of you have probably heard that. Grief is love, nowhere to go, with nowhere to go. Queen Elizabeth has often said in her lifetime, and you've heard me requote her, that says, grief is the price that we pay for love. So why does it hurt so bad? It's because you love so deeply. Now, I know I'm not the only one here in this virtual space that's experienced the love of have experienced the death of someone, but I didn't love them deeply. When they died, I went to their funeral. I went around and viewed that body and I say, that's them. Oh, that's them. But I didn't pass out. I didn't cry. Why? Because I didn't love them to the extent that other people may have. Okay? So Earl Groman, he's also a well-known grief expert in our industry. He says, grief is not a disorder. It's not a disease, nor a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity. It is the price that you pay for love. The only cure for grief is to grieve. Somebody needs to put that in the chat for me. The only cure for grief is to grieve. I get asked often, how do I get through this? I say you grieve through it. That's exactly how you are going to get through it, okay? So many are here on this live, and some of you will watch the replay and you don't even recognize that you are overwhelmed because you are so used to being overwhelmed that has become your norm. That's unhealthy. Okay? So when does grief become overwhelming? We must understand what normal grief is and what complicated grief is. Okay? Normal versus complicated or prolonged grief. So, here are some things I want us to look at as it relates to the comparison. Now, if you have the handout, you can follow along with me. If not, just listen up and I'll share all of the information. So, as it relates to normal grief, what's the duration of that? It's the grief that gradually eases within 6 to 12 months for some people. Okay? Many of you have heard me teach about the fog. You're in a grief fog. You really can't think clearly. That's usually anywhere from 6 months to 12 months of that first year. But if you're dealing with complicated or complex grief, you are experiencing what is called intense grief, and it's beyond 1 year. The grief is intense and it's beyond 1 year. So, what about emotional waves? Emotional waves. As it relates to normal grief, you have sadness and it comes in waves, but allows moments of relief. So, just because the wave of grief comes in, many people think they're not doing well, and that is not true. I'll give you a great example. I forgot to mention to you guys at the beginning about the recent loss that I had. My brother in law, he passed on February the 5th, and we will bury him tomorrow. Originally, the funeral was scheduled for the 19th, but because of the inclement weather here in the DFW area, he's being buried at the military cemetery. So we had to reschedule it until tomorrow. So he died on the 5th. This is the longest that I have ever experienced a body being out that long, and we haven't had the funeral. So that was rough for me. But about a week ago, I was thinking about my god sister. Some of you remember me talking about her. She died in December 2023. So I was thinking about her, and the reason I was thinking about her is that she would be supporting me and my sisters as it relates to my brother-in-law's death. So I'm like, man, I wish Sylvia was here. She would be helping us do this. She would help us do that. But another reason I discovered after I sat in the wave of grief is that her grandbaby's baby dedication was that week. And so my body was already responding to that day of being there, dedicating her grandbaby, and she's not here. So that was a wave of grief that came through. That's normal. It doesn't mean that I'm experiencing complex grief. Okay? So what about complicated grief? This is where the waves are constant and you don't have relief. For some people, it is that way. You don't feel relief. So what about your daily functioning as it relates to normal grief? You can engage in work, in your relationships and self-care over a period of time. You get up, you may not feel like it, but you push through and you get up. You show up. So that is very, very good. But someone who's dealing with complicated or complex grief, they struggle with daily life. They withdraw socially from other people. So what about the acceptance of loss? Acceptance of loss when it's normal grief. You come to some realization of accepting that this is my life. I'm learning to live without my loved one. I'm learning to live this divorced life. I'm learning to live estranged from my children. Whatever grief experience you're having, you're adjusting to that. But if it's complex, that means that people are unable to accept the loss and they get stuck in their grief. This is where you are held hostage by the pain of grief. Okay? So, what about seeking help for normal grief? Some people can get sufficient support from their family, from their friends, or even support groups. Okay? But here's the thing with that. You got to make sure you have the right people to support you. If you don't seek professional help, you need people who understand grief and who have processed through it in a normal way, in a healthy way. You don't want people in your space who will tell you to suck it up and just keep moving on. Okay? Because they don't understand your grief journey. But some of you may require to go see a therapist or a grief counselor. So let's talk about grief as it relates to some signs to watch for if your grief is overwhelming you. Okay, so grief can become overwhelming and it can impact your everyday activities. Okay, it can impact everything in your life, your relationships, your work, your mental health. So it is definitely important to pay attention to the signs. Pay attention to the signs that grief is interfering with, your daily life. So you don't want to be what I used to be. Hey, Martha. Hey, Michael. Good to see you guys. You don't want to be what I used to be. I used to be a red flag collector. I would collect those flags. I would. I can change them. I can help them. I would just pick up the flag. I would see it, but I would pick it up and tuck it in my pocket and keep moving on. Okay. There is a meme that I saw on social media about 4 or 5 years ago with this little monkey. It was a circus monkey. And the person said, didn't you see the red flags? Why did you get in that relationship? And the monkey said, well, I thought it was a circus. That was me. I saw the red flags in that relationship, but I just thought it was a circus. So you don't want to collect the flags. Pay attention to them when you see them. Okay? So here are some of the signs to watch for if you are overwhelmed. Where you have persistent sadness or deep emotional pain that does not improve over time. It doesn't improve over time. What about if you're a person that avoids social interaction? You're isolating yourself from other people. You don't want to be around. Now, let me say that in grief, there are times when you do need to be alone, when you do need to isolate yourself, but not on a consistent basis. So if you're that person that's constantly turning down every invitation, perhaps you're overwhelmed. What about difficulty functioning in your work, in relationships, or even your self-care? You're making mistakes at work. I have several clients who are sharing with me they're making mistakes in their business, making mistakes at work, and not really able to function as they normally would. And I'm teaching them that they must give themselves grace because they're in grief. They're in early grief. And that's what happens a lot of times. So what's another sign? Significant changes in your sleep patterns. You either sleep too much or you can't sleep at all. What about loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities? Things that you normally would enjoy, you don't enjoy anymore? Or what about some physical symptoms, such as you're constantly fatigued, you're having headaches, stomach aches, issues without a medical cause? Okay? Issues without a medical cause. I was working with someone one day, and they're experiencing grief due to divorce after being married many years, many years, and the person is holding the anger in. And I wasn't surprised when the person said that they were dealing with kidney stones. Kidney stones. So the reason I'm giving you that example is that, again, things happen physically. When you don't deal with your grief, when you don't get it out by way of mourning, it's staying in your body, all of that emotion. Okay, so you must have a healthy way to process it. Another sign is engaging in unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as the example that I just gave of suppression. Okay, what are you doing? You're trying to numb yourself. Those are called numbing behaviors, such as excessive drinking, overeating, substance abuse. Okay, so those are many things that people do to cope. So if you find yourself having a glass of wine more often than you normally would, it has become a numbing behavior. And then lastly, persistent feelings of guilt, hopelessness, or thoughts of self-harm. All of those, if you experience any of those, that's a sign that you're overwhelmed. a sign that you are overwhelmed. So, recognizing the signs early, just like with our physical health, early detection. When you recognize the signs early, you can get help. You can get help. Seek professional help, whether it's through therapy, through counseling. Therapy just kind of goes a little deeper than counseling. You can go to support groups. You can talk to somebody, a trusted friend. But the main thing, you need to get some type of help. Some type of help. So let's see what some other people are saying as it relates to grief. Grief recovery method. This is one of the popular resources out in the grief industry that they train grief facilitators. This is what they teach. They said grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. That speaks of America, United States. That's what we're going through. They defined it appropriately. It says grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or a change in a familiar pattern. So that helps us to understand again that grief is not about death. It is about loss of any kind, loss and transition. And then another author, Unknown, says grief is the last act of love we give to those we loved. Where there is deep grief, there was great love. Where there is deep grief, there was great love. Okay? So let's talk about for a moment types of professional help for you. Types of professional help. Of course, grief counselors. Yay! That's what I am. That would be me. That would be me. Grief counselors. You don't want just a counselor. You want someone who specializes in grief. Okay, that's a different thing. I've had many clients come to me. They said, I've gone to other counselors, and they said basically I left counseling the counselor. Many of them said, man, they couldn't handle the stuff that happened in my life. The counselor was crying when I left. So I had to apologize on behalf of all counselors. I said, that's not how that experience is supposed to happen for you. Okay. So it's one thing to learn about being a counselor in school, which is very important. But when it comes to something as sensitive as grief, that's something that must also be taught by life experience. By life experience. So this is how I can teach it, because I have lots of life experience as it relates to losses. So you want to find a counselor. Some of us may need a psychotherapist or a therapist, but all of these individuals, what do? We help navigate emotions and give you coping strategies. Okay? We give you coping strategies. Some of you, I've had some clients that needed more that I could offer, and I refer them to other therapists. For an example, some of you need what is called EMDR. That's a technique that deals with eye movement, desensitization, and it helps you with trauma and grief. Trauma and grief. So I'm not qualified to do that, but I'll connect you with somebody who can help you with that. So you have to know that there are many coping experiences out there and strategies, but you need to get with a professional that can provide that for you. Another professional resource, type of resource, is faith-based counseling. Very good. I'm a person that believes in God. I'm faith-based, all of that. I think it's very important that you get the spiritual guidance in your healing process as well, especially if you're a person of faith. So you can get faith-based counseling. You can get help from support groups, kind of like what we do, when we're in person. Now, this is a different type of help that is virtual. Okay, so we can provide shared experiences, and it's a community experience. Now, some of you may not like community experiences. I've heard some people say, I can't be in a grief support group because when I hear somebody else's story, then I start crying. When I hear somebody else's story, then I'll take on their grief and not deal with my own. So you have to know what works best for you. What works best for you. Some of us need them both. Some of us need one-on-one with a professional, and then we also need that support group experience. Now, when you go to support groups, make sure it's a facilitated support group. What do I mean? You don't want to go to a space where people have just gathered and they're just sharing their expressions and emotions. No, you don't want that. You want someone to guide it. Because if you've ever been in a group setting, you know there's always somebody who's always wanting to dominate the conversation. And they want to share all of their grief. I'm like, no, honey, you need to book a one-on-one so you can have that experience, but not in the support group. I had one lady who came, this was way before COVID came, and she came to a grief support group I was doing for a funeral home here in Arlington. And she came, it was a 6-week setting. We would meet weekly for 6 weeks, and she came on week 2. And she said, I heard about this grief support group, and I'm so glad that I came at the very, very end. She gave these expressions, and she said, this group has helped me more than the group I've been a part of for 2 years. And I said, okay, I thought that was interesting. And I said, well, what's the name of the group that you attended? Because as a grief counselor, I'm always looking for resources to refer people to. And she said it was a group called DA. DA. Had never heard of that. Been in the industry since 1989. Never heard of grief support group called DA. And I asked her, well, can you tell me what that stands for? She said, oh, yeah, sure. It stands for Depression Anonymous. I said, ma'am, you need to run from that group as fast as you can. No wonder. It's been 2 years. And she was stuck there because all the people were depressed. So, yeah, support groups are good, but you got to know which support group to go to. What other type of professional help should you seek? Medical professionals. Now, here's a hard one for some of us to hear. Some of y'all need to go to the doctor to get checked. Yes. Some of you do need a psychiatrist. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And a psychiatrist, all that person does is write meds, prescriptions for meds. That's all. They're not going to sit there and counsel you. They'll send you to a counselor or a psychologist for that. But some of us need to go see a medical doctor to address your clinical depression, not the depression that's associated with grief. That's normal. Okay? So we need to see a medical doctor. Excuse me, bless me. For your depression, some of you are dealing with anxiety that is overwhelming, or just physical symptoms within your body that's tied to grief. This is why I'm constantly asking people when I work with them, when I meet them for the first time, is, have you gone to the doctor to get a checkup? Their response is, no, I'm not sick. I'm like, yes, you are, as it relates to your heart. Your heart is not well. You've had a loved one to die. You lost something. You need to go to the doctor and get checked out. And then lastly, what is the last type of professional help you need? Expressive arts therapy is another type. What is that? That's where you use the creative outlets like writing and painting or music to help process your grief in a nonverbal way. So those are the types of professional help. Grief counselors or therapists, faith-based counseling, support groups, going to a medical doctor, and then lastly, expressive arts therapy. Okay? Expressive arts therapy. So seeking help, know this, is not a one-size-fits-all. When I'm encouraging people to find help, I want you to shop for a counselor or a therapist just like you shop for clothing or whatever it is that you shop for, food. You're very particular about that. There has to be a connection, okay? So seeking help is not one size fits all. Finding the right type of support is going to be crucial for your healing. It's going to be crucial, okay? So where do you start? Number one, for those of you who work on a job, you can contact your human resources department. And ask them, do you have benefits on your insurance that will cover mental health counseling? Many areas are called EAP, Employee Assistance Program. So you can ask your HR, do I have EAP benefits? That's Employee Assistance program. I'm always encouraging people when people call me for consultations, because I'm private pay. I am not on the insurance slate. And I will always ask people, do you have insurance benefits? If you do, I give them the same instructions, because you do want to use your benefits. That's what you're paying for. Okay? So you want to do that. Where to start? Go to your HR if you are working on a job. Number two, you can ask for referrals from trusted sources. That's what I like to do. I have colleagues that I have a list of counselors and people I refer to that accept insurance, some that don't accept insurance. It just depends upon what the person needs. I'm going to refer them here, go here, go here, because I trust these people. And then I have made some referrals, and some clients have come back and said some things that were not representative of me. So I said, okay, let me scratch that person off my list. They're not a trusted colleague anymore. Okay, but you can ask for referrals. I like that, because if I'm looking for, I want to know, have you tried um the food first? If I'm looking for something to eat in particular, I'm gonna ask a friend, have you tried it? Did you like it? Then I'll go there. Okay, so ask a trusted resource. The third thing you can do, this is a big one, is go online to Psychology Today. Can somebody put that in the chat? Psychology Today. It is a website that has all of the therapists on there. And all you have to do is put your zip code in. You can narrow it down if you want male or female, black or white, or whatever, brown. If you want them to specialize in something, if you want them to be faith-based, all of that. Go to Psychology Today, and it will tell you if they accept insurance. Thank you, Chesma, for putting that in the chat on Facebook. Psychology Today. Now put this in the chat, or you can go to Grief Share. Grief Share. Some of you may have already experienced Grief Share. Now, this is faith-based. This is faith-based. I refer people there also. It's like an 11-week program where you go, and churches host it all over America. So Grief Share is something that you could do. Yeah, Grief Share. Okay? And then lastly, as it relates to where to start, again, you want to research your counselors or therapists specializing in grief. And if you go for the very first time and it's not a good fit, you don't have to go back to that person anymore. You don't have to go back. After the second time, for sure, a lot of times on that first session, you know, oh, this is not a good fit. It's not going to work. But definitely by the second session, you will know if this is going to be a good fit for you. If this is going to be a good fit. So that's where you start. So what should you expect when you go to therapy? When I'm working with people and they're coming for their first session, I'll ask them, so how did it feel on the way over here, the ride here? They say, oh my God, I was nervous. My stomach started bubbling. They say, because they don't know what to expect. And then once we finish with the first session, I said, now, was it as bad as you thought it was going to be? They said, no, I was so nervous and I didn't know what to expect. Okay? So know that it is a process, not a quick fix. When you're going to counseling, to therapy, it is a process, not a quick fix. Seeking help is a courageous step towards your healing, okay? And know that it is not just for when things are bad. It's not just for when things are bad. So now let's understand some benefits. Somebody put that in the chat, benefits. What are some benefits of going to counseling? What are some benefits going to counseling and therapy? They provide a safe space to process your emotions, to develop these coping strategies, and to find healing. Okay, so you want to know that seeking therapy is not a weakness. There are a lot of benefits. It's not a weakness, but a proactive step towards your emotional and mental well-being. So what are the benefits? Number one, it provides a safe space for you to process. When people come in, the majority of my clientele I see are faith-based people out of the body of Christ. I see leaders in the fivefold ministries, pastors, prophets, evangelists, all the teachers. And when they come in, I say, I'm not talking to pastor today, and I call them by their first name. I give them a safe space to just be. Okay? So what are some of the benefits in going to get professional help? Number one, emotional support. Can somebody put that in the chat? I see you guys scribing on Facebook. Emotional support. A professional therapist or counselor, they provide a non-judgmental environment for you to express your feelings and experiences. Yeah, non-judgmental. So when these people come in here and I said, hey, I'm not talking to your title, I'm talking to the person. I need you to say whatever it is you want to say, and say it how you want to say it. And I call my office the vault. This is a vault. I'm bound by confidentiality. I can't share anything. So you get emotional support. I love it when I go talk to my therapist. And I met him for the first time last month. I met him for the first time. I've been with him going on 3 years, virtual, been virtual. And I met him for the first time. But I love going in that space because I get good emotional support. Number two, you get coping strategies. You learn healthy ways to manage your grief, to manage your stress and emotional pain, and how to deal with life. That's a benefit. That's a benefit. What's another benefit? Validation and understanding. Have you ever told somebody something that you were so excited about? And when you told them, it was like you didn't get the response that you were expecting. I'm like, I should have told somebody else. You're not giving me the energy that I need or want or even desire. But your therapist or your counselor, they're team you. They're there to validate and understand you. They help you feel heard and know that you're understood. Okay, so you got the emotional support. Another benefit is coping strategies. Another benefit is validation and understanding. What's another benefit? Personal growth. I love sharing with my clients and letting them know, because a lot of times with grief, because grief can be heavy and weighty, and they think a lot of times they're not progressing, they're not doing well. But it's my job as their counselor, the grief counselor, to point out, no, you're doing good. You showed up. You've been consistent. I, Let me give my own personal example. When my therapist told me at the end of last year, 2024, I did the doggone thing. I showed up for every therapy appointment. I did all of my homework, because prior to that, I was hitting and missing. Life would be happening. Life was lifing. And sometimes I would go to therapy, sometimes I wouldn't. But 2024, I hit it. And it was so good and refreshing to hear my therapist say, you did the doggone thing, girl. You were consistent. You did all the work, and I see your personal growth. So you get personal growth, okay? Personal growth. It encourages self-reflection, resilience, and you get a deeper understanding of yourself. What's another benefit? Reducing isolation. It reduces isolation. Connecting with a therapist or a support group, it helps you break those feelings of loneliness. Was working with a client last week, and it was cold. It was cold here in the DFW area. Oh, it was cold. Did I say it was cold? It was cold. And I just knew this client, they're normally in person, but I just knew they were going to be virtual because it was so cold. Next thing I know, they're at my office. And the person said, I needed to get out of the house. I needed a different environment. So it reduces isolation. And the last thing, as it relates to a benefit, guidance in moving forward. You get guidance in how to move forward. Professional people can help you navigate this space and set realistic goals for healing. Because sometimes some of you are like I used to be. I was a person that would set goals, but I would set unrealistic goals. And I was basically setting myself up for failure. Setting myself up for failure, okay? So what are the benefits? What are the benefits of seeking professional help, especially when you are overwhelmed? You get emotional support. You get coping strategies. You get validation and understanding. You learn about personal growth. Then you reduce the isolation, and then you get guidance on how to move forward. Guidance on how to move forward. So, what are some overcoming barriers that you need to deal with? Barriers to overcoming as it relates to seeking help. Some of us don't seek help because of some of the barriers that we've been taught. Okay? Know that seeking help is an investment. Can you put that on the chat? It's an investment in yourself. We buy clothes, we buy whatever it is that we buy, whatever it is that we like. But when you go to counseling, some of you can't afford not to go. You got to figure it out. Maybe you don't have Starbucks this week for a whole month. Save it so that you can pay for a therapy session. So seeking help is an investment in your healing. It's not a sign of failure. So what are some signs? What are some signs as I come to a close, and then I want to go through an activity and we'll be finished. What are some common signs or myths or misconceptions? Number one, some of you think I should be able to handle this on my own. Has that been you? I can handle this on my own. That can be a barrier to reaching out for help. What's another barrier that you need to overcome? Therapy is only for people who are weak. Weak, or listen to this, some people say crazy. Do not say those words. Don't say crazy. Therapy is not for those who are weak. Therapy is for those who are strong. Yeah, because that's true strength to be able to admit I need some help. And then lastly, another barrier, denial. That's right, Chesma. They're in denial. Another barrier is time heals all wounds. Wrong answer. Not true. Time does not heal all wounds. It's what you do with the time that's going to heal the wound. What's another barrier that people deal with? Cultural and religious stigmas around grief and mental health. One of my clients was told by a dear friend that you only get so long to feel this way, and then you just gotta move on, suck it up. It only had been a month since the person died, and the person was like, you got to move on. So culture and religious stigmas. What's a religious stigma? Pray about it, honey. Just pray about it. That's a stigma. I have prayed and my heart still hurts. Or then another stigma is I can't afford it. Financial and accessibility. I can't get there. I've had clients take Uber to come to counseling. I've had clients ride motorcycles from an hour away where they live to my office. Yeah. So those are definitely some barriers. And if that's you, you want to definitely overcome that. Okay. So the last thing I want to share with you is the grief activity. It's a handout. Okay. If you haven't gotten the handouts, we want you to get the handout. But the grief activity, before Barry comes back, I want you to do this. Do a check-in just to see if you are overwhelmed. Okay. First thing I want you to do is take a moment to answer these questions. These are on your handouts. Answer these questions. It's self-reflecting questions I want you to answer when you have some quiet time. How have my emotions shifted over the past few weeks? Am I experiencing more good or bad days? Have I been able to engage in daily responsibilities without feeling overwhelmed? Am I avoiding certain places or peoples or activities that remind me of my loss? Have I engaged in avoidance behaviors? Meaning I have excessive sleeping, I'm overworking, or I'm isolating? Ask yourself, have I been able to express my grief through unhealthy ways? Through healthy ways. Have I been journaling, talking, doing creative activities? Do I feel isolated in my grief? Or am I allowing others to support me? Have loved ones expressed concern about me and my well-being? That's a huge one. And have I considered seeking professional help? These are all questions I want you to sit and ask yourself and answer. And then what I want you to do, I want you to rate yourself emotionally. Over the past month, as it relates to your grief, from a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is minimal distress, meaning you're able to manage things, where 10 is where you're overwhelmed. I want you to assess where you are. Okay? If you put 1 to 10, 1 is that you're able to manage things well, or 10 is you're overwhelmed. If your score was 7 or above, you need to seek professional help. If it's 7 or above, if it's from 4 to 6, reflect on which coping strategies are helping you and which ones you need to improve in. And then if your score is 1 to 3, acknowledge your progress. You're doing well. Okay? Acknowledge the progress you've made and just make sure you maintain it. Maintain it. So what's your homework? What's your homework? There's an action plan. We want you to have an action plan. We're coming on here sharing this information, but we want you to print the handouts, then go home and do the work. Go home and do the work. Okay, thanks, Mike. So what I want you to do is to write down one small step that you can take this week to support your healing process. Just one thing. Because see, some of us get overwhelmed because we're trying to do too many things at one time. Too many things at one time. And something else you can do is just reach out to a friend. Let them know, hey, I need some help. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not doing well. All right. So just be aware. Self-awareness is very important. It helps you identify if you need to inquire about support or not. Okay. And remember that seeking help is definitely a step towards your healing process. So has this been helpful for you today? Can you put it in the chat? Yes or no? And I don't expect to see any no's. Has this been helpful for you? Let us know. We thank you so much for joining. Mr. Barry is going to come back and close us out. He's coming. And we'll see you guys next month. And we'll be virtual next month too.
All right, let's give a hand. All right then. And you know what's the best thing about this? It's free to you. Jesus paid it all, and the life celebration by Franklin paid it off. Very good points. And if she was going too fast, if someone came in the middle, you can always go back to the beginning. YouTube, put the subscribe there. I was watching that. We need to reach 1,000 subscribers on that. So go to YouTube, A Life Celebration by Franklin on YouTube, and subscribe there. And make the numbers go up there. We're getting serious with this because we have a producer. Yes, I thank the producer for coming on. And that on tomorrow on the Hot Pepper TV show on YouTube, I'll be on speaking as a Black African American businessman, the first broadcast that they're going to be doing on that. So join and subscribe. It's free. Go to the Hot Pepper show on YouTube, the Hot Pepper TV show on YouTube, and subscribe and join 7 p.m. tomorrow, Monday, February the 24th, 7 p.m. If you're going on 7 a.m., you're going to go on real early. Real early. That's my time to be at the gym. But I'll be on 7 p.m. The Hot Pepper Show YouTube, speaking on African American businesses. And I'll be the first on that program. Thank you, Pepper Thomas, for thinking enough to bring me on there. As I said, this is ending Black History Month. This is the last Sunday there, but it's filled with so much history there. If you haven't gotten a calendar from a life celebration, it's an African American Black history for all during the year, and different people that have made tremendous contributions to America and to the world. Not only that, on my Sunday school class, I shared this morning on my Facebook and I think went to YouTube some significant things that have been made that people didn't know about, but made it, such as the real McCoy, Elijah McCoy, making the difference that the locomotive would be continuously lubricated instead of having to stop for all that. So we have made great significance there. And we made it great. It ain't just beginning to be great, it's beginning to get something else. But that's another broadcast right there, another broadcast there. Thank you again and join and share this with many others. If you haven't gotten your end of life business taken care of, it's not too late. Get a pre-arrangement, someone that you trust. That would be me. Get that going there. I can't tell you as a film director how disheartening it is for people to come and they knew a time was coming. Sometimes they have time to get it together, but they ignored it. And then they go to pieces and they say, "What we gonna do?" The film director is looking at you now. What you gonna do? So get your business together and get it taken care of there. Okay. So you have the handouts, print them out and share them. Now, if we was meeting in person, my wife, Marie Franklin, would have some snacks for you. So this time you're going to have a virtual snack. So I'm serving today pig feet, oxtails, chitlins, pig ears, hot water cornbread, macaroni and cheese. That's it virtual. I'm filling you up more than she would have gave in person. So, oh, and a 3-layer German chocolate cake. How about that? So that's what your repast, your refreshments are today. Virtual, virtual there, virtual there. So fun. So we're going to get ready to end this. And thank you for joining and sharing. We'll be back next month, same back time, same back channel. Dr. Tonya Cunningham will be back. And she has some books out. Be sure to go on her site and be sure to share her books. It'll help you, help someone. And a lot of churches now starting to, I noticed, putting grief recovery groups together. She would love to be your speaker. Yes, she would. And it's called an honorarium that you give. Ministry requires money. A lot of churches looking for musicians. And I saw one that had, I'm going to call it a recipe of what they needed. They had all these choirs, all these recommendations. And on the bottom, and your compensation for all of this is going to be $150 a week. You looking for a Sunday school musician. That's what you looking for, not a real musician. So when you call people to come in to be guests and to do things, by all means, to whom much is given, much is required. And once you bless people there, you got to do that. You got to do that. Thank you again, our producer, Mr. Cedric. Thank my wife for doing what she does in the background and the scenes. And thank you, Dr. Tonya Cunningham, for their wisdom and knowledge and for sharing that and going on. So we'll be back next week. A producer, you can sign us out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace.